Hey friends, my name is Taryn and you are watching my channel, Birdhouse Blooms. This is part 2 of a 2-part series. I thought it was going to be longer, but I was able to squeeze everything into this second video. This video and the previous one was all about how I've been building a new cut flower garden or cut flower farm, depending on what you want to call it. This is the continuation of the previous video. I know I jump around a lot on the timeline. I'm trying to group things together properly and keep it pretty linear, but sorry if it's like really weird. I'm not sure how else to do it, so it might be a little confusing, but I've tried to put descriptions and dates in where I can. There's some parts where I like to give like little updates during the video, and then we go back to the building process. So all of that's labeled and I hope it makes sense. I'm glad you're here for the second part, so let me show you the rest of this process. And obviously, like, this is just a work in progress, but this is just the very beginning of everything, and then I'll just update you more regularly, hopefully, on all the changes in the garden. We are starting out here in the first dahlia row. Bracken Rose is one of my favorite dahlias, and you can see I saved an old tuber and the new growth is popping up next to it, so I'm very happy about that. The sunflowers are progressing along and getting bigger, and once these are mature and get chopped out, the dahlias should be taking over. I really like the idea of interplanting things within the dahlia beds during the cool season before the dahlias get going. I may save this spot every year for my first round of sunflowers that I always try to get for Mother's Day because the timing is pretty good for that. Other things I'm considering putting in here are anemones and ranunculus. That timing should work out too, and the foliage on both of those plants isn't too huge, so even if the dahlias are starting to pop up, I don't think it'll compete too much. I am struggling a little bit with deciding if I should mix perennials and annuals together. It makes maintenance kind of hard, but I also think this still is a good spot for sunflowers, so I'm still deciding on this. The 4 plants that you see here that are tall are blueberry plants, and they did horribly in the drought and heat wave that we had. I cut them way back and I think they're still alive, but it's kind of funny to see them like this as I'm editing it because they just look so terrible now. I did interplant these with some annuals. There is Cerinthe and Saponaria in there. At first I wanted those to reseed themselves there, but now I'm not sure if I want that because I think I want to plant cool flowers there. But Saponaria and Cerinthe are cool flowers, so maybe they will pop up at the right time anyway. This is the second row of dahlias, so I have a total of 2 rows of dahlias, and they are popping up, which is exciting. I do have stock seedlings interplanted in here, and I didn't expect them to do much, but I still wanted to plant all of my seedlings that I grew in the apartment just to get roots into the ground and organic matter going in these beds. The stock didn't really produce usable blooms as I predicted, but I'm glad that they were in there, strengthening the soil biology. Another good thing about planting these seedlings in here is that the potting mix I use to grow the seedlings has really good ingredients in it that will help add to the soil as well. Here is an update on the first cutting row. In the cutting rows, I have things blocked together instead of mixed around. I've got zinnias, some eucalyptus, straw flower, cosmos, and other things. Here's some gomphrena, and you can see that it's blooming exceptionally short, and that's because the seedlings are just stressed out. These actually eventually produced usable stems. I was shocked because I didn't think these were going to do anything productive, but the gomphrena, the straw flower, even the feverfew is not too bad. Now next to these rudbeckia, I have tried a new plant. It's called mignonette. I've seen Floret use it, and I believe I got these seeds from the flowering farmhouse. The plants didn't do well this year because of our drought and heat, but I definitely want to try again. These are campanula seedlings. Again, I didn't expect these to bloom, but they actually did. I had some stems that were tall enough for arrangements, but I mostly just left all of these blooms in here because they were constantly full of bumblebees, so I didn't have the heart to cut them out. This is a second cutting row, and I have more campanula and gomphrena down here at the end. And then I also have some celosia. The celosia also turned out to be really good and really tall after pinching it for about a month. I am really surprised that these seedlings rebounded and were productive. If I was on a tight timeline, it probably would have been better to just cut those out and to start over with fresh seedlings. This part of the garden I'm planting up with peonies that were established and ready to bloom that I got from a nursery. I was hoping they would bloom at the right time for Mother's Day, but they did not. So you'll see my contingency plan later on in this video. I also have 2 worm composting bins here in this bed. I need to get new worms. They either left, which is fine, they're free to leave, or they died in the heat wave. So either way, I need to get new worms for these bins. The last time something like this happened and all my worms left, I later found them throughout my garden beds in the dahlias, keeping my tubers nice and clean, so that's fine. But honestly, I haven't found any worms, composting, or earthworms or anything like that in the garden yet. Okay, in this view of the garden, on the left are the 2 cutting rows that we just looked at, and then the 2 dahlia beds in the middle. And on the right edge is another perennial hedge that I planted. I am just obsessed with the idea of a mixed perennial cutting hedge and having as many of those as I possibly can on the property. Both Florette, Erin from Florette, and Lisa Mason Ziegler talk about their amazing hedges and how they house so much wildlife and biodiversity, and I just love the thought of that. And I also love the idea of the privacy that they'll create for us and just being able to hide in my little secret garden amongst all these hedgerows with the cutting rows in the middle. I really think it'll be awesome once these perennials get big. Now, in order for me to afford a lot of perennials, I had to get them very small. So again, I've interplanted a lot of annuals in between the perennials, and eventually I will not be able to do that because once the perennials are their full size, I don't think there will be room. Some of these perennials did not make it, and I just think that was due to our heat and drought, so I'm not surprised. I am disappointed, but I'll be replacing things as I need to. Some of these look really bad, but actually rebounded and put on new growth about a month after transplanting, so I need to update and show new video of these perennials so we know which ones survived and which ones didn't. And again, here I'm just pinching these super short celosias, and they actually did grow up as well, just like the other ones, and produce long stems. Now, a lot of the perennials that are doing well in here are the foliage perennials, like the privet, and the ones that are struggling are the berry stuff, like there's some proudberry that doesn't look very good, a few lilacs that look pretty bad, but some of them are rebounding, like I said earlier, so I'm just going to wait it out and see what happens. This baptisia I grew from seed. The only seed I could find was for the traditional false indigo blue color, which is fine because I want this baptisia mostly for the foliage. In the other perennial rows, I did plant some of the more expensive, fancier varieties to get pretty flowers and blooms, but all the ones I started from seed, I'm going to use mostly for foliage. That being said, the blue flowers on them are also very pretty, so I'm not going to be upset about those flowers, but trying to get the other varieties from seed, you just can't find that. And then I also grew a lot of echinops from seed as well. Here is a look at the rose garden. I really need to do an update video on this. Some of these I just could not tell if they were alive or dead because they didn't have foliage, but the stems were still green. So I did not dig anything out or take anything out just to see what would happen. And some of those rebounded and eventually put on foliage, and some of them didn't. So I'll definitely do another video showing each one of these roses and the varieties of the ones that survived. And then I'll either replace them or get new roses or just fill in with annuals. I'm not sure. Now these echinacea seedlings look so rough, like their leaves are dying back to the point where there's only one little leaf surviving, but they actually look amazing right now. They mostly all survived, so the echinacea was very strong. This random spot there has a dahlia in it, and I forget the variety, so that will be a surprise. Now this rose I know for sure did not make it. The variety was Bolero. I'm not sure if I'll replace it because I have one very similar to it that looks really good. I have Veranda Cream. I also have Desdemona, so I'm not sure if I will replace that or not. Strawberry Hill Rose is settling in. She went through a wilty period, but I think she is recovering. The delphinium and foxglove seedlings that I have planted in here are doing quite well. They transplanted well. I did lose some, but not all of them. I'm definitely hoping they reseed themselves and come back next year. And also, I think I mentioned this in the previous video, but I need to figure out a way to support these plants without affecting my roses because I don't really want netting on my roses. But the delphinium and foxglove definitely needed netting. So I'm not sure what I'm going to do about that yet. I don't think corralling would be enough for these tall spike plants. I'm also curious to see when the delphinium and foxglove start putting on foliage in the spring to see if there's any interplanting opportunities for cool flowers. This part of the garden is still open and plenty of opportunity to plant something else. I think it'll end up being peonies. This does eventually get fenced in, so there will be a fence line through there. This is the back hedgerow behind the rose garden, and it's just kind of showing you the hill that is at the back of our property. Again, our fence isn't in, so there will be a weird, kind of awkward diagonal cut across this hill, but most of the hill is on our property. It actually doesn't look all that steep in this video, but it is definitely annoying to walk on. It has the same rolling effect as our previous house. So I do still want to plant things on it, but not things that need a lot of maintenance or cutting. So definitely maybe some trees, some shrubs, maybe pumpkin vines, something that I won't need to be tending to too often because I don't really like dealing with the hill. At this point in the build, I needed more compost. So I brought in another 8 yards of compost topsoil mix. At this point, I am up to 21 yards total of soil that I have moved myself with the wheelbarrow. No, it is not fun, but that is generally how I like to take care of this construction mud problem. This side of our house is basically the only place in the whole yard that gets shade. So I'm planting my hellebore right here. I've tried to plant some ferns in a stilby, and you'll be able to see them as I pan through later, but they all died because this does get an hour or two of afternoon direct sun. And so I'm thinking I might plant another row of something to help shade it that can tolerate the sun, but also shade. So maybe some hydrangeas or baptisia or something to provide this area some relief. So far, the hellebores are doing well, and I'll do an update video on that, but I just have a hard time growing astilbe. I've always wanted it, but our climate is so hot and intense that I've struggled with it. All of the hellebore cuttings I got from Three Porch Farm, so I'm really excited to start out my collection and get those growing. And here is a little update at the end of May of what these plants looked like. I have tried to grow astilbe from both started plants and from bare root and have not been successful. So I'm not sure how I want to go about this again, but I definitely want to keep trying because it does look like such a beautiful plant. It may not be something that's right for me right now because there is no shade, but I do plan on planting those plants like I was talking about before. So maybe after that, and those get nice and big, and there's some shade in this area and protection from that afternoon sun, I can try out the astilbe again and the ferns because I love the look of ferns and I would love to have some. I have considered temporarily putting a hoop tunnel over these with shade cloth, but haven't done it yet. For Mother's Day this year, I just did not want to miss out on this opportunity to build the business side of things. So I became a member of the Piedmont Wholesale Flowers Co-op so I can buy from them. And the reason I really like this co-op is because it's located near where I live and it's a co-op of flower farms in our area. So these are still locally grown flowers. Many of them follow the same principles of using natural processes, sustainable growing practices, and things that I want to support and do anyway. So I love that I have finally found a place that has the same values as me and that I can support their farms and get locally grown flowers and help supplement my stuff until I can get up and running. Having a wholesale flower place where I can buy flowers has provided this safety net and backup plan, and it has changed everything. I can say yes to so many more requests or feel comfortable launching a subscription or reselling flower bouquets because now if I do not have flowers, I know where I can get some that were also locally grown and they also match the same aesthetic because we're all growing similar things. So it just opened up a lot of doors for me and it also just eased my mind and dialed back the anxiety I had about promising flowers and then not being able to deliver. So, this collaboration is just so amazing, and I'm so grateful that I get to be part of this co op. I follow Lenny Larkin on Instagram and her email newsletter list, and I also have her book, so I'm a huge Lenny Larkin fan. But she always talks about how supporting other local farms and bringing in local flowers to help supplement your own is not a cop out and it's not cheating, and that collaborating can really strengthen your business and other businesses around you. And I never really took that to heart, but this Mother's Day, I just needed an option, and she's put out a post similar to that effect really near Mother's Day. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to do this. I'm going to collaborate with these other local farms in my area. And it's one of the best decisions I've made as far as the business side of growing and selling cut flowers. Now, for my Mother's Day bouquets, I chose kind of a brighter color palette, and I actually really like this. I normally choose a soft color palette, but I liked these bright colors this year. I did peonies with agrostemma, snapdragons, I got orleia, and some saponaria. The bouquets turned out really well. I had the full intention to film a bouquet making process video, but By the time I got all these flowers prepped, I only had a few hours left of my night, so I just quickly put the bouquets together. And I'll put some pictures and videos of the finished product up, but I promise I do want to make some bouquet making videos. I just haven't had a chance yet. This really pretty foliage with the blue purple flowers is Baptisia, so that's what I grew from seed. So I'm so excited that in a few years I will have some of my own just like this. In this pinky purple flower here, and I think I also have some white, this is agrostemma. I've never grown this, but I ordered the seed from Johnny's this year because I loved it so much. I am going to be growing snapdragons and saponaria and orlea and all of that this fall into the spring. So my plan for Mother's Day next year is to just order the peonies from the wholesaler from Piedmont Wholesale and then try to grow all of my own fillers. I am planting a ton of my own peony roots, but they will not be ready to cut from for a while. So I'm glad to have this backup plan where I can get my peonies from Piedmont and then grow my own fillers. This year was the first year that I actually sold out of my Mother's Day bouquets. I was really surprised. Usually I struggle with selling my flowers. I do try to do pre-sales online, and I usually do get a few, like a handful of deliveries from that. And I always advertise pre-sale of bouquets that can be picked up at my local shop in downtown, and they just never really sell well. And every year I take 10 to 15 bouquets down to my spot and I'll sell like two or three. But this year was different. I think I just got a new audience when I did a collaboration with a local yoga studio right before Mother's Day. I didn't get any new pre-orders from that situation, but I took my 10 bouquets down to the shop as usual, and all day Friday, nothing sold. So I was like, okay, this is going to be the same as every other year. But on Saturday, as soon as the shop opened, I sold all of my bouquets in the first like 20 minutes, and then I had nothing left for the rest of the day. So I'm hoping to build on that experience this year and just buy in my peonies and have my focal flowers and again grow as much filler as I can so I can offer way more bouquets. And I'm hoping that I can get the same group that were trying to come in and buy the bouquets at my shop to pre-order them online so I know how many I need to make. I still plan on taking extra bouquets to the shop for walk-in clients, but I would love to have more pre-orders just to make things a little less hectic. Now, after Mother's Day, I still continued planting things out into the garden. May is not the proper time to plant daffodils, but I had these bulbs stored from the previous fall in my fridge, and I didn't think that they would survive just staying in there much longer. So I planted them out. I did this the last time we moved like this from an apartment, and they actually survived and bloomed the following spring. So there's a chance that these bulbs will be fine. There's also a chance that they're already dead, but they didn't look too bad. So hopefully in the spring they will bloom, and if not, I will order new ones. Now in the middle of this bed, I'm going to plant 20 peony roots, and the variety on the peonies that I chose was Kansas. Normally, I go for Sarah Bernhardt because she's just like the perfect pastel blushy pink. But after the Mother's Day bouquets I made recently, I was really craving just a more saturated, brighter color palette. So Kansas is technically considered a red peony, but it's actually just a bright pink. And I have 20 of those bare roots coming from Ampersand Bulb Company very soon, and so they will go down the middle of this row. Ampersand is one of my favorite places to get wholesale bulbs from. You do have to have a business account, I think, to set up purchasing from them. I'm not sure if they have a retail side or not, but on the wholesale side, their roots and bulbs are amazing, and they also offer smaller quantities and they don't have minimums. So you can get as few as 5 peony roots or as many as like 200. It doesn't matter, but I just really appreciate their quality and that they have small minimums. At this point, the garden is really starting to grow and get some green on it. It's funny, the Bermuda grass looked pretty dead in the earlier part of this video, but you can see that it's starting to spring back to life and turn green. And all along the edges of my beds, it is growing really tall. I do want to edge these beds, I just haven't had a chance yet, and I think that will help me with the Bermuda grass problem. I've always struggled with managing the grass in my garden beds, and I think that's just a part of living in the South. But, anyways, I also think that once these perennials get nice and big and start shading out some of the grass, that will also help. And again, just like the roses, I will do an update video showing you all the varieties of the perennials, especially the ones that survived and the ones that need replaced. But the annuals I have interplanted in here is mostly cress, basil, and straw flowers. This is some forget-me-not, and it actually got taller than I expected, but I will need to start fresh with brand new seedlings next year. But the straw flower is doing amazing, and that's what is in the back of all these perennials. I do think my berry heavy gold plant did not survive, but anyways, the straw flowers have been the backbone of my bouquets that I've been taking to my shop just because they last a really long time and they're dryable. And a lot of people really like straw flowers. I just didn't really realize that, but my straw flowers are selling pretty good at the shop downtown. I definitely want to add more perennials to the hedges like winter berries. I just want a lot of winterberry. I've always wanted that. Maybe this will be the garden I actually get a ton of winterberry for Christmas arrangements and decorating. I just think it would be so fun to have tons and tons of red winterberry. And toward the end of this row, I do have more Baptisia and more Echinops planted. I have also always wanted to make wreaths out of dried flowers and things like Echinops, so I planted a ton of it. Hopefully, I did not overdo it, but we will find out. Basically, any Baptisia or Echinops seedling that survived got planted out. I was recently listening to a podcast from Lisa and Dave Dowling, and he did say that Baptisia grows like a taproot and it's almost impossible to remove and dig out. So hopefully, I like where I planted all my Baptisia seedlings. This section over here with the sweet peas, I'm just hoping that I can collect some seed off of these if they produce any flowers, but I'm not hopeful because it's getting too hot for them. Over here I have a teddy bear magnolia tree. This one is a dwarf variety and I think it only gets to be about 15 feet tall. So it is going to provide some shade in this area eventually. So I may have to rethink my plan of peonies being over there. I'm not sure how much shade it will produce. I was really trying to find places to put all of my fall peony root order that was not on the hill, but I may have to utilize the hill because I'm quickly running out of space on the flat portion of the property. I would love to have terraced garden beds on that hill. That would be so pretty and so amazing. I just don't really know if that is practical or if that will ever happen for me. It is now late May at this point in the garden, and a lot of these roses are starting to look a lot better. This one, I can't get over the color. It's called Easy Does It, and she is so pretty. I personally love flowers that have more than one color in them. Even when I grow annuals, like zinnias and things, I try to get some flowers that have more than one color. Meaning this rose is pink, she's a little bit coral, she's a little bit orange. I just think it helps blend things and make the arrangements look really curated and a lot more natural when you can blend the color palette instead of trying to work blocks of solid colors together. This is an example of a rose that I thought for sure was not going to make it because all of the stems were brown, but it had one green stem on it. But it ended up putting a bunch of foliage on. It is now late May in the garden, and the dahlias are starting to put on a decent amount of foliage. Some of them look really good, and some of them just are not growing at all. Here in my zone, it is so hot that dahlias really do not come into their own until late summer and early fall. So it's hard to not panic at this point when the stems are really thick and the plants need constant pinching and some of them just aren't growing. This is just really common for me. So that's why I just try to plant a large number of dahlias so that I can get a decent amount of stems eventually. Last week, I did a really big chop on them. When I first started growing dahlias, I thought pinching was a one-time event that you did in the spring. In the first stem that popped up, you would pinch that and then your plants would be good to go. Well, that is not the case here. I've been pinching fat stems off of these dahlias all summer long. You can see here some of them are just dying off, which I think is part due to the soil that I brought in might have been a little too hot for them. So some of them are fine, but some of them are dying off. But as I was saying, I have pinched these plants many times since they've sprouted up, and I'm still not getting the tall, thin stems that I want. So I'm hoping that as the weather cools off in the fall, I'll get a lot of blooms. You will notice too that I have this bed mounded up kind of higher than the cutting rows, and that's because I like to keep the dahlia tubers above ground level. I don't mind if the root systems, and I actually prefer if the root systems get down into the ground, but I want those tubers above ground level because normally we deal with a lot of rain here and rot is a problem. This year we're in a drought, so these dahlias are very thirsty, and my decision to have these tubers up above the ground level is extra challenging this year. But I definitely prefer this, especially with our wet winters, for keeping the tubers healthy. I also overwinter my tubers in the ground, so that is another reason why having the tubers above ground level for the winter time when it's raining a lot and the plants aren't growing or absorbing any water. That helps them survive the winter better. I don't get all of them to survive, but a lot of them will survive my winter here in Zone 8A. The bigger problem for us here is definitely tubers rotting, not tubers freezing. At this point in the garden, I would consider it early summer, and the plants are definitely starting to get some size on them. I am getting some increased weed pressure, but nothing too crazy at this point. These weeds, I think, were just part of the compost soil mix, and they're really easy to pull out, so they don't bother me hardly at all. And the grass hasn't become a huge issue yet. The straw flowers are putting on blooms. My zinnias are starting to throw their first blooms, as well as the cosmos. The eucalyptus look pretty good. I'm really happy with this. I don't think I'm going to cut on it this year. I may just let them grow. They will need support eventually. And I do get Hortonova netting on these plants at some point. It's just not on yet in this video. I do also have some ageratum planted in this row. It's kind of funny because the first couple of plants that came up, I actually pulled out because I didn't recognize it, and I was like concerned that it might be a weed. But I eventually remembered that I planted it there, and it's blooming now. So I'm glad I figured that out and did not pull all of them out. But you can see a cluster of them here where I was like thinking it might have been some kind of mint or something. But eventually there was just too many of them for me to think that they were weeds. Pretty convinced. I was like, okay, I think I planted this. And so I let it bloom and I was like, oh yeah, ageratum. This is the Lysianthus bed in late May. I grew these from seed. I always grow my Lysianthus from seed, and for me, it's just a big numbers game. You can see these are 200 cell trays, and I think I have like 50% of those left, maybe more. I'm not sure, but you can see that there's a lot of blank cells in here. So for me, I just plant way more Lysianthus than I need, and I get usually enough. And it's funny because I thought I was going to use about a third of a row to plant these out, and it ended up taking the entire row. So I had a lot of seedlings survive. And the colors on the seedlings are going to be a complete surprise. They are blooming now, and it's so fun. They're kind of all mixed together, and I didn't keep track of which seedlings were which and which colors were which. So it's kind of fun to see what I have. It looks like a lot of them are the lavender and champagne. I do have some white and some yellow and some cream. So it's really I really like the Lysianthus this year. It was kind of like Christmas, just seeing which colors were going to come from the blooms. Now, a lot of these plants have like 10 buds on them, so I'm wondering if I go through and deadhead all these blooms off, if I can extend the harvest and just stretch it out a little bit so the rest of those will just bud up and bloom, because I don't want to cut all of these right now. I did cut a lot of them for an event and I did make a bouquet making video from that, so I will post that soon. This bed has gladiolus in it, and I don't think I'm going to grow those anymore. I'm really struggling with those plants being unhealthy and rotting. In this bed where I have zinnias and questionable peonies, I have all the peonies that I saved from the previous home in the refrigerator planted here, but they did not look great, so I'm not expecting a lot of them to survive. These peony plants that I got from the nursery, I think are suffering from like sun scald. I'm hoping they'll recover and be okay. These are the Kansas peonies that I got from Ampersand, and I don't know why, but I did not expect them to put on any growth or have shoots this year. I just thought they were going to sit in the ground until spring. So that was kind of a surprise that they were shooting up greenery. This is another mixed perennial situation. All the plants are very small because I planted them from seed, but I have more echinacea and yarrow. This mock orange plant, I have two of these. I got these from the nursery and they absolutely scorched to death in our drought. So I cut them way back. I've never seen a tower mock orange before though, so I don't know if I ruined the plant or if it will shoot new towers, new stems in the spring. But those were almost dead. I'm surprised they rebounded actually. This section has some dahlias that didn't fit in my original two rows, but now that I know what tubers sprouted and didn't in those two rows, I will probably move these over there in the fall once everything has been frosted and is done blooming, because I do have gaps to fill now in the dahlia rows. I will divide some of my favorite tubers also, I think, just to fill those in. And here's kind of an overview of what the garden's looking like at this point in time. You can see our fence is in now, so I'm starting to plant perennials along the fence line. And what's different here is that I'm digging them in and planting them into the ground. And some of these plants have made it, and some of them did not. A lot of these lilacs are slowly dying off, and they are supposed to be good through zone 7, and technically we're zone 8A. So I'm wondering either if they're rotting in that muddy clay soil or if it's just too hot for them. I'm not sure which is the case. If I do have lilacs survive, maybe I will replace them, but otherwise I'll have to pick a different plant. I need to dig some up just to see what's going on. And maybe I'll plant some new lilacs in a more raised situation, like a raised bed, kind of like the other perennial rows I did. Maybe they would do better that way. This fence line perennial project is going to take me a long time to do, but I had the plants, so I wanted to get those in the ground. And eventually this will need edged. I'm going to need to do something about the sod. It's going to need mulched. So there's a lot of work to be done, but I just wanted to get the plants established and going as soon as possible. I didn't have enough plants to do the complete fence line, but I think at the bottom of the hill I'm going to do some trees instead of shrubs, just smaller ones. I really would like some deciduous trees so I can get some leaf mulch, so I'm hoping to do some maple trees. I would like crabapple trees, apple trees, some dogwoods, maybe one evergreen big fir tree just so I can have some Christmas stuff. And I don't know, maybe some other trees, but there's a lot of space down there where there aren't any shrubs like this that I can fill in that area. And of course, if I get trees and shade, I'm also going to underplant that with ferns and astilbes and hellebore and, take advantage of every square inch that I can because I can never have enough plants. This lilac, I believe, didn't make it, which is sad because they looked so good when I planted them. I have a lot of perennials planted here that I've never grown before, so that is super exciting. This one's beauty bush, and I think the snowflake is a new one, so I'm really excited to have the space to grow some of these bigger perennials and just see how they do. I'm really hoping to get more into design work, and I think having these larger perennials will help with that. I have a camellia planted here, and I don't know if anyone's ever cut camellias before, but they are not a long-lasting cut flower. So the reason I wanted this plant was for the foliage. I find that I like to cut camellia foliage around Valentine's Day when I'm trying to do my tulip bouquets. So that's the main reason I have this one. But I definitely picked a flower color that I like so I can enjoy it in the landscape. I do have two smoke bush plants. I'm excited for those. I've seen those stems at the Piedmont Wholesale Flower Market and I think they're gorgeous. So I did plant that one that you just saw, the wine color. And then I also have the very first one that we saw in the fence line was a smoke bush that was like a lime green color. So I'm really excited to see how those work out also. In mid-June, I've really noticed a lot more pollinators and insects in the garden, which I think is a promising sign that things are going to balance out. Watching these pollinators just makes me so happy, and it's one of my favorite things about the garden. In mid-June, after weeks of dealing with a heat wave and a drought, we finally got 2 inches of rain. I don't think I've ever been this nervous about a drought in the past before, and this one just seemed so much more extreme than the other ones. I don't know if that's true or not, but this one just felt really long, and I was trying to water these plants, but still trying to use water responsibly. And I didn't want everything to die, but nothing was doing well. And I was seriously thinking I was a terrible gardener and that I had lost my edge for being able to grow plants. But really, everything just needed nature to take care of it. It needed the rain, and no amount of watering that I do will ever be able to replace or do what a good rain can do for your plants. I seriously have such a new appreciation for rain, and I'll just never think of it the same. Another thing that has now arrived in the garden is Japanese beetles. I hate them so much. They have about a 6 week lifespan, so for the next 6 weeks, I'll be collecting beetles in my soapy water and trying to keep my plants from looking destroyed. Some of my perennial seedlings, like this foxglove here, are starting to bloom, and even some of the plants that I got as potted plants are starting to bloom also. This echinacea is so pretty. And even though these are all short and not really cuttable stems, I'm really happy to have color in the garden, and the bees and butterflies are loving it. We have all kinds of pollinator wasps and great creatures coming into the garden because of all the flowers. These stems on the dahlias are definitely not usable. The slender part of the stems are usually only like 4 to 8 inches tall at the absolute most. Most of these stems are the really thick, hollow stems that don't drink water well, but I love seeing these blooms. I have not grown cinder rose before, so I'm glad to see what that one looks like. Even though I think the bloom colors will change once we get into fall, I'm still happy to see them now. This zinnia patch has really started to rebound since the rain. I didn't think anything was going to grow out of this, honestly, but it just needed way more water than I can give it. These here are really short, but they eventually do get cuttable in the next month or so. And the variety on these is the ballerina seeds from Johnny's. These zinnias, I'm loving the color on. It's the newer variety from Johnny's called Aurora, and I'm just loving how there's different tones and the colors blend from one into the other, and they really help bring that bridging element to my bouquets. This Baptisia is really liking the rain, and the yarrow is also starting to put on blooms. I grew my yarrow from seed this year, but I also brought in plants, so it's kind of a mixture. I think this one's from the Summer Berries collection. I also planted Love Parade and Summer Pastels. I think that's all I planted. The Cerinthe has a second flush that is looking really good. I don't know if I'll be able to cut on this, but I definitely want to save seed from it, and it's doing a nice job of being a ground cover in this area. It's keeping the grass out, so I'm going to leave this here and hopefully collect seed from it later on. I'm taking advantage of this rainy weather to pull out grass and weeds. It comes out a lot better after the rain, but you can see this grass here is very stubborn, but I'm hoping that I am more stubborn than this grass this time. I'm definitely prepared to start my edging project over the fall and winter. So I'm trying to suppress the gardener in me that wants these beds to look perfect and embrace the farmer side of myself and just make sure the beds don't get out of control and make sure that no plants are being suffocated by the weeds and just take care of what I consider emergencies with the grass because it's really not terrible in some places, but I'm really focusing on maintaining edges and making sure that I don't lose the beds. The next project I started working on was transitioning the front yard beds from pine straw into shredded wood mulch. I just wanted to see if there was a way that I could improve the soil without bringing in additional compost to layer on top. That's something I could bring in more of later, but I just didn't want to at this point. I was kind of over it. I'd already done 21 yards of soil and I just didn't want to do any more. So I'm trying to find a way to maybe rehab the soil a little bit. I'm going to take off the pine straw, put down some amendments, and then put down the shredded wood mulch. I've always found that the wood mulch does a little better with retaining, not a little better, way better with retaining moisture in the soil. So I'm switching over to that. I'm also going to try to plant some cover crop sunflowers or something in here to get organic matter and roots into the soil, but it has to be something super tough that will survive in this construction mud. These right here are zinnias and cosmos and dahlias that I've grown from seed. I did raise this soil up a little bit for these dahlia seedlings and zinnias. What is underneath here is all of the soil and leftover bulbs from the tulips that I grew on my patio in my apartment that you would have seen in the previous video. So I think that's why these plants are surviving and doing okay. You can tell the zinnias and cosmos, they're okay, but they just took, I think, 6 to 8 weeks longer than the other ones in the back to flower. So what I'm doing is I'm taking all of this pine straw to the back because I'm not going to waste it. I'm still going to use it. And I'm putting it around those shrubs that I've planted on the fence line. And I'm piling it like 2 feet high. I was hoping that piling the pine straw this high would smother out the grass, but it did not. It's just growing up through it. So I'm going to have to work on this some more, but I think this is a great start. And I think just fluffing it up and pulling it back on top of the grass so that it's not coming through it might buy me a little bit of time. But again, this is a fall winter project, so I'm just doing the best I can for right now. My neighbor also did the same thing where they removed their pine straw and they gave me their pine straw, so I have a huge stash of it that I can use and keep adding to this fence line. Toward the end of June, I'm really starting to get a lovely amount of flowers. Nothing huge, but it's really picking up and it's giving me a lot of hope for what the garden can bring me in the future. It was kind of rough starting from scratch all over again, and with it being the third time, you would think I would know what to expect, but it was still just really hard to see all my seedlings that were not healthy and my perennials being so short, but I'm glad to have flowers. For this project, I shopped at the Piedmont Wholesale Flower Market along with using some of my own greenery to make a special bouquet for a friend. And this was a really fun project for me to get to work on my designing skills and my bouquet making skills. I have a long way to go, but this was just, I really appreciated that she asked me to make this, and I really had fun working on it. After I was done making this bouquet for her, I just really needed some time to decompress from working on the garden and to just kind of like play with the scraps, if you will. Like, I really just loved playing around and making that bouquet, and it just made me kind of want to stop working toward a goal and just kind of enjoy the process a little bit more. And I've really been thinking about, if I wasn't in a hurry, how would I be working on the garden? I've also been really thinking about how I can rebuild the soil and use everything that I have on site, on, from the garden itself to help rebuild the soil. What compost can I keep from my scraps? What seeds do I have that I can plant as a kind of green manure or cover crop? I'm just really overwhelmed by the thought of having to bring in so much compost and mulch, and I just don't really want to do that. So I'm just trying to creatively think about what I can do. And playing with these scraps and cutting them up with my pruners just kind of was something that I was doing while I was thinking about it, while I was trying to come up with creative ideas on what I was going to do in the garden. I really wanted to think on and contemplate about what I could do for the garden, what I could do for the wildlife and the birds and the insects, and what my flowers could do to uplift other people, and just have a more balanced approach to cutting versus enjoyment versus selling compared to creative play and learning and designing. So, this was just a really nice, pleasant time where I was thinking about all of these things and what direction I wanted to go in next year or even toward the end of fall. Just, just evaluating if I wanted to change anything.
Bring me into golden sunlight. If I'm going with you, I know we'll get to the other side. Sinking in, I know this feels right. Catching a breeze, love moving through me like a wildfire, like a wildfire. Never the same. Whenever you're calling my name, I'm taking my sweet time. Hey, If I'm going with you, I know we'll get to the other side. Sinking in, I know this feels right.
All right, that concludes this video and the original garden build. So hopefully you enjoyed that, and I'll see you on the next one. Bye.